What is going on? I am back making another shitty video with quite possibly the worst recording equipment known to man and stock Windows Movie Maker. But today I'm going to be making a video on horror, all the spooky shit I like. And what can be scarier than poorly made fucking video essays? Ooh, spooky. But in all seriousness, I want to talk about what makes horror in games effective. I believe proper sound design and eerie themes can lead to an exciting and disturbing experience. However, some games that implement horror are not exclusively horror games, so in this video I'm going to be talking about things in games that just generally scare the shit out of me. But before I get into the ways that games do horror correctly and in a manner that is actually scary, I want to take a little second to talk about all the ways they just, kind of fucking suck at it too. So the first missed opportunity that I'm going to kind of talk about for a second is in the Resident Evil 3 remake. There is a part in the game where Jill Valentine is like assaulted. I mean, she gets like throat fucked by this like monster insect thing.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try.
Which is disgusting and like visually the worst thing ever. And I feel like it could have been used to be a really effective mode of like body horror, because most people don't like bugs, and the idea of like having a parasitic bug lay eggs inside of you is for most people, most normal sane people, a fucking nightmare. So the fact that this happens once in the game and only occurs once in the game, it's just like throwing a good idea right out the window, because it would have been a really good thing to have this reoccurring thing happening, to where you go into a situation, you'd be like, oh fuck, I need to have a green herb in case I get attacked by another one of these bug fuckers. And unless I'm just like an epic pro Fortnite gamer and I've only encountered it once and never again, but I think it's something that is just scripted to happen once, and the encounter never fucking happens again, and it's just a total disappointment. And it would have been a really good way to let the person playing the game be like, alright, I gotta take very careful inventory on what I use and make sure I always have an herb in my back pocket for not only being attacked, but also being, a fucking, just attacked by one of these disgusting bug fucks that just make me so uncomfortable. And it's just so gross looking at it right now. It's just the most, sheesh. And with all disgusting bug stuff, in hand, another thing that I have a problem with, in some horror games, I don't really have a specific example of one, but whenever there's a encounter in a horror game that is just obscenely difficult for no reason, and it becomes one of those things where it's like I get more frustrated than I am scared, and it kind of kills the whole experience for me. That's one reason why I wasn't particularly a fan of Outlast, in that I would get often confused on what my goal was, and the fact that you can't fight anything just led me into way more frustration than fear. And I feel like obviously the game's not for me, but that is one thing that happens sometimes in boss fights. It happened in the last encounter in Dying Light 2. There's a situation where I'm not going to show it or talk about it in depth in case you want to play it, but it's such a just grueling battle that is just so ridiculous and dumb, and I feel like they should have just, I think just Techland needs to just stay away from bosses. They're not very fun, but it could have been done a whole lot better. And obviously I feel it 100% necessary to talk about, just very quickly, about how everyone just hates jump scares, but they're in everything, and I'm not a big fan of them. playing the Evil Dead game made me pretty fucking immune to them because they happen so often, and it's just one of those things where it's like, oh shit, I got a jump scare, and I don't even get scared. It's more of just like, oh fuck, my character's in-game fear meter went up, and now I gotta deal with that, and it's not even something. So I don't care much for jump scares. I don't hate them that much, but I think they're not utilized in the best ways they can be. But that's just one thing I feel like most people aren't fans of, so I felt like it needed a mention. And before I get into the actual key points and meat of this video, I asked a couple friends for, you know, what they thought was effective in horror, and a lot of what I got back was well built, like a lot of really good build up to a jump scare, or just general fear build up to, you know, nothing, you know, like that false sense of there's gonna be something around the corner, and then it turns out there's not. The whole your mind is more scarier than what the game can put out. And also, you know, actually having to hide from like enemies, or not like where it's a situation where it's like, oh, I'm in a cutscene now, and now I gotta hide behind this desk so I don't get seen. But like shit where you actually have to physically find a hiding spot yourself, only to then see your pursuer walk in the room and just tear up the room looking for you. It's truly fucking scary, you know. And I got a lot of that, and I agree with that. And just general enemy design, and you know, is just how some enemies like Resident Evil 7, where some of the enemies just look fucking disgusting, and it's like I don't even want to look at that, let alone try and fight it, you know. So that was just the general feedback I got, and I thought that was pretty good, and I wanted to put that in here. So for this general outline, I'm going to be talking about atmosphere, enemy design, sound design, and just a couple little bonuses here and there on things that I generally think are really fucking tasty and disgusting. So let's get to it. So first things first, I'm talking about atmosphere. Alright, so this is going to be long dark corridors. I'm talking little kids you want nothing to do with, you know, kind of type shit where you're in the mouth of a volcano punching the crap out of a boulder. This is going to be all about how the game world looks, how it makes you feel wandering around in it, you know, the dilapidated structures, old creaky wooden floors, you know, zombies, you know, just how it's gonna make you feel.
Come on, don't look at me like that, alright? I'm not unaffected. No, wait, please!
First game I'm gonna be talking a little in depth about, as far as atmosphere is concerned, is gonna be Scum. Alright, I'm gonna be coming back to these games here and there, but this game is a survival horror zombie game. With some base building, you know, one of those super unique games where it's the first to do the thing that I just said it does. But in all seriousness, it's a pretty fucking creepy game, all things considered. It's a lot of dilapidated buildings, abandoned towns, and of course zombies. And these aren't your typical brainless Walking Dead, you know, pushovers. I'm talking like 28 days, 28 weeks later zombies that run at a full fucking sprint, and all it takes is one to catch you with your fucking pants down, and it's game over real quick. You know, back to the lobby, kid. And you know, it's just generally horrifying. You know, there's nothing scarier than walking around, fumbling around in the fucking dark, and hearing a zombie scream in the same building you're in, and then it's like, oh great, I'm gonna die young, I guess. So as I stated previously, it is super fucking unforgiving. You know, it can be a game over really quick if you don't know what you're doing. And even if you do know what you're doing, it can, at the start of a session, or you know, when you get to a new server, it can be fucking rough. There are very few supplies around the map. It's hard. It's really fucking tough. So you know, it could all be just wiped away really quick, and that's something that is scary in its own. All the hard work you put in can be lost in a matter of seconds, you know, if you go to a location unprepared, or even if you run across another player who just wants to cap you in the back of the head and fucking take your shoes. It's rough. It really is rough out there. And you know, there's also a lot of fucking downtime too. You'll be wandering around for a minute and not see anything, and that is your worst enemy, because you'll be wandering around for like, you know, 10 minutes without seeing anything, and you'll let your guard down, and then that's when all of a sudden you turn a corner and there's fucking 3 zombies just, you know, standing there, and it's like, oh, you weren't walking around, you weren't being quiet, you weren't paying attention, and now you have, you know, you're running away from 3 enemies, and you end up running into more, and now you got a small horde on your tail. So it definitely is one of those games where it takes patience, but it's also fucking terrifying. So I talked a little bit about the enemies, and there really isn't any soundtrack at all, which is kind of interesting. So I'm not going to be talking about this game much as far as sound design goes. It's pretty standard. However, the sounds you do hear is going to be like crickets and animals here and there. But the really interesting thing is the zombies, they'll scream from time to time, and they only scream when you alert them of your presence. So sometimes you'll hear a zombie screaming off in the distance, what sounds like a mile or two away, because you know you can hear shit for very, very far in this game, and you'll hear a zombie screaming from like really far away. And at first I thought it was like ambient noise until after playing I realized that that was another player disturbing a zombie, and then them screaming because they saw like a player. So there's a lot of sounds you'll hear where it's just like you'll hear a zombie screaming far away, and that's, you know, it lets you know, hey, there's an enemy over there, but it's also like, oh fuck, there's other people nearby. And that's when you really got to be, you know, on your A game and being stealthy and trying to sneak around. And so it turns into a game of not just hiding from zombies, but also hiding from other people, which is even harder. And you know, as far as zombies, you know when you see a zombie, it's gonna want to kill you. But that's the thing about it. You don't know what another person is gonna do. So it adds a wild card to it, where just because you see someone, you can assume they're gonna kill you, but they might not. And you can't assume they're not gonna, because they just might. But overall, my favorite thing about this game is the setting. It's supposed to be like a game show, where your character is a criminal and you have this implant like planted in the back of your head, and it essentially turns your nervous system into like cameras, right? Like in the lore, it's like you are apparently, it's able to track your location, and you're broadcasting things you see. And there's these drones that fly around and shit that will from time to time come and look at you and like record you for a minute while shining a light over you, and that usually scares the shit out of me because I'm never expecting it. So you're on a game show. That's like the whole setting, and you're a prisoner on this island. And as you level up and you kill more things and become more and more badass, you get a fame rank, and your fame will go up. And that's basically the game's way of telling you that people at home watching are like, damn, this guy's badass. Like, I'm rooting for this guy. So it adds this whole little layer of like, yeah, it's a stupid zombie survival fucking base building video game, but it's also got like lore, which is a nice added touch that makes it feel a lot cooler than like something like Rust. But that's the setting. You're in a game show, and there's the other contestants are the other players, and the zombies are fallen contestants, which aren't actually zombies. They're called puppets. So the way they work is they're just being controlled by the implant attached into their their nervous system. So it's kind of interesting. They're not like your standard zombies. They're more so just they're puppets, and that's what they're called in the game. So I thought that was really fucking cool, and that was one reason why I actually got into playing this game, was because I thought the concept was fucking sick. I kind of just wanted to mention that game specifically because there isn't a whole lot to it. It's an early access game, and it's like a survival multiplayer game. But as far as other atmospheric games goes, I really like the darkness of a lot of horror, but I also like when a horror game isn't afraid to be like, hey, the sun's out now, and still maintain the whole horror aesthetic to it, like Dying Light. Predominantly it is the daytime lasts a lot longer than nighttime, and that's intentional because the night is this thing that is the more scary thing to it. But I find that sometimes when a game is showing me these horrifying things during the day, it's a lot scarier, because typically you think of the day as like, oh, it's, nothing bad's gonna happen, it's daytime. Whereas sometimes the game's like, nope, you're not safe. During the day, like, motherfucker, like, you're gonna get fucked either way. So I really like when a game can stray away from the typical, ooh, it's spooky and dark, and just go to straight broad daylight, and it's like, oh yeah, you're still scared, aren't you, you little bitch? So as far as the whole atmosphere in these horror games goes, it's the typical spooky, brooding, forest, or the dark corridors, stuff like fucking Resident Evil 2 or Bioshock, Bioshock has that little bonus of thalassophobia that I fucking have, where it's just, we're underwater and it's horrifying on its own. but typically these games are shrouded in darkness intentionally because most people don't like the dark, and it's even worse when you're in the dark and there's shit like, you know, you got the fucking your Evil Dead barbed wire zombies, which are the worst things ever. I hate them, and I'm not looking forward to even having to look at them while I edit this. But Scum and Dying Light are the two exceptions that I've played recently where it's like, no, you're still gonna be scared during the day. Like, don't be mistaken and think everything's okay now. And I really do appreciate that when they're able to be like, yeah, we're still scary during the day. I think that's a really good way to tell that a game can truly be scary. If it's scary like broad daylight or night, it doesn't matter. You're still gonna be scared. So if I had to make a call and say like what I think the most effective way of horror is, I'd have to go with what is typically the most, some people might say, overused, the whole dark corridors and claustrophobia. There's a reason why there's so much of it. You got like the whole Resident Evil series that's like its whole jam. You know, small corridors and darkness. You got Dead Space, same shit. You got BioShock, which, you know, I wouldn't really necessarily call it a horror game. It's more so just a really good game with a lot of horror in it. But I feel like that's why you see so much of it. It's just such a good way to creep people out and make everyone uncomfortable. And it's not necessarily my favorite, but it's really good. I can't argue that it isn't effective. So just the whole darkness and dilapidated structures in general are kind of creepy. But I feel is just one of the most effective and why we see it so often in gaming. Alright, I feel like that's enough rambling from me on atmosphere. I'm going to go straight into enemy design. So for this whole section, it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm just going to be talking about enemy designs that I really like, and there isn't really a whole lot that I don't like in horror. So it's going to be all about the enemies.
Multiple homicides. Half a dozen units already on scene.
131, please advise.
Maybe it's the ghost of that doctor who went schizo and chopped up all those patients.
Alright, so first things first, zombies. Can't have horror without those. It's kind of like the standard issue cannon fodder for just horror in general. I feel like every game that comes out now has some iteration of zombies in it. You know, from everything from Resident Evil to you know, Left 4 Dead and fucking even Call of Duty. So standard issue zombies, let's get to it. And as far as zombies go, my favorite kind of zombies aren't really the ones I see in like shit like RE or, you know, just any kind of shambling zombie. I prefer the fucking quick ones. Alright, those ones are probably the scariest ones because I smoke a lot, so the whole concept of sprinting away from something that's also sprinting, trying to literally eat you, does not sit well with me. And I don't like it. It's such an unnatural feeling because most zombies in media are the slow, atypical, you know, creatures that just kind of shamble around. And when you have ones that sprint, that kind of just throws the whole concept on its head. And it's like, oh, I never thought about that. Please don't ever put those in anything ever again. So those ones are always, you know, terrifying. And even worse when they can run quicker than you. And that was one thing I found so, you know, awful about Dying Light. It's a parkour game where you fight a lot of zombies, and I'm not a very good runner, so having zombies that can not only sprint down like a grown man, but also keep up with someone who does like free running, I mean, like, no one stands a chance. Are you kidding me? Like a volatile running at you that can also scale the side of a building, like, get fucked. You get out of here. You're screwed. You know, from everything from how quick they are to their design, with like the false ribs sticking out and their split in half mandibles that like kind of like, you know, just that kind of remind me of like the mandibles of like a bug. It's disgusting. And the whole like concept is, oh, it's just gonna fucking sprint at you full speed and run you down like a fucking lion, and fucking just eat the shit out of you. Like, no, thank you. And just to remain on the topic of zombies, one thing I feel that Left 4 Dead kind of popularized, and I absolutely love them for it, is the whole idea of special infected. How you have your standard issue zombies, and then you have like the ones that are way fucking different, that are super specialized. You know, I mentioned volatiles. Those are one of these special infected of Dying Light. And in Left 4 Dead, you have they're kind of a little bit more cartoony, but like you have the tank, which is a super fucking big, beefy zombie that is basically a fucking Ford F-150, or you know the witch, which looks feeble but can fuck your shit. You got the ranged infected, the one that can lasso you with its fucking tongue, which is just gross. And then the hunter, that's basically a volatile that runs you down and will tackle you to the ground and fuck you up. And one thing I want to make just a really quick honorable mention towards that I said something about earlier was just the necromorphs in Dead Space, and how like allegedly they were inspired by like car crash victims, which I mean, that's fucking true. Like holy fuck, that's insane. And just even in that game, they're awful. The design it's a lot of body horror. It reminds me a whole fucking lot of John Carpenter's The Thing from Another World. And just, yeah, gross. I don't like even thinking about the necromorphs. They're horrible. I mean, they're really fucking cool. They're badass as fuck and like do a really good job at scaring the shit out of the player. But yeah, they're gnarly. So moving on from zombies, I want to take a quick minute to talk about another couple kind of creatures that I think are also disgusting, and that's going to be just parasitic, you know, kind of alien creatures that will take control of someone, essentially, basically just fungus zombies. So like shit like The Last of Us has really good designs on some of these characters. I don't have any footage because that's not on PC yet, but like shit like the Flood from Halo, how you have these fungal spores that infect the humans and turn them into these weird distorted monsters. And eventually, when they have enough biomass, they can create a hive mind, which allows them to become more tactical in their fighting, and can allow a big group of them to become smarter, and in turn becoming more of a threat in general. Like whereas when it's a small localized outbreak, they're more feral and animalistic. But when it comes to larger groups obtaining a lot more biomass, they can turn into these like very calculated and smart, like basically supercomputers that can cooperate amongst a large group of these zombies and take out militaries. So it's like a kind of fungal enemy that, as long as the infection keeps spreading, they become more dangerous. Whereas you have the whole idea of 28 days later, where it's like as the infection goes on and more people get infected, they become less dangerous because there's less food to sustain them. Whereas the Flood, it's the complete opposite. The longer it goes on, the more dangerous it becomes. And I think that's a really cool concept, that an enemy can become way more of a fucking danger the longer it's going on, because it's like now you gotta snip it at the bud real quick and do a lot of drastic shit to cut it down. So that as far as shit like glassing your own fucking planet, to killing civilians and soldiers just to contain an outbreak, it's kind of fucking wild. And continuing on the whole like fungus shit, it's not necessarily a fungus, but even Half-Life with like the head crabs, how they can hijack a person, turning them into a monster that is doing things against their own will. And those things are also really horrible. They scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, just because of the weird movements they made. And there was a couple instances in the game where there was just a lot of good moments, like the dude sitting in front of the TV with the head crab on him, freaking out while like the static is going on. Fucking horrifying. Really good designs on that aspect. Just gross popcorn zombies on top of someone's head, like these weird parasites. Parasites in general just scare the shit out of me, because it's like, I don't want things inside me that shouldn't be, So parasites are just no thanks. And Half-Life is really good at that, because you have this whole fucking scientific facility that shit goes haywire, and it opens like a dimensional portal of some kind of wacky, and then wacky antics ensue with head crabs and like interdimensional aliens and shit. Shit gets wild real quick. And I think the concept of being underground and having to escape this massive facility alongside of like zombies and shit is really fucking dope. And the enemies in that game are fucking wild, like the bull squids, the fucking barnacles. They're really like it's just awful. It's terrible, and I love it.
Are we gonna be together again, Dad?
Alright, so just a couple more things for me to ramble on about. Now I'm going to be moving on to sound design. And first thing I want to mention, and as far as the sound design department goes, is going to be Bioshock. You know, the Big Daddies. I really like how they make these really weird, almost like ethereal sounds. It kind of sounds like a fucking whale, like whale moaning, and the very, very heavy boot, like, you know, footsteps, like the just heavy boots on the fucking ground that kind of shake everything around it. Really good design that makes them seem even more imposing, right? Like, you got these big hulking monster things with like drill hands and grenade launchers on them and shit. Can't even really see if it's a human or not, and they make these fucking just really gnarly guttural like moans that just sound like a deep sea creature, alongside their just very slow demeanor and how they just thudding along the side, like the floor, with these tiny like little girls who are also fucking horrifying looking, you know, just basically walking these little kids around to then the corpses where these little girls prod these corpses and pull out the fucking like their goop. They like goopify them and pull out their atom, and it's really fucking gross. I love it. And just overall, the sounds that the little sisters make when they're just like jabbing these bodies, it sounds like it sounds like a mix of someone like shaking a can of soup and like throwing wet sandwiches off of a roof. And it's like this just really weird, gross squishing and like just kind of like just stabbing, like a stab, like you're stabbing a snowman with like a hot dog. I don't know how to describe it. It's really gross. Stepping away from the sounds that enemies make, I want to take a quick second to mention the sounds of the environment the environment makes are also very powerful. Like the sounds of things breaking, you know, that you can't see. You know, things where, you know, you're walking and maybe you stepped on something and it's shattered, or you know, you accidentally broke something without realizing it, and it scares you because you turn around expecting an enemy, only to realize that you are the reason for the sounds, or maybe you're not the reason for the sounds. You know, you hear these things I want to say off screen, but it's not the phrase I'm looking for. But you hear things out of like ice, like out of where you can see, and you have no idea what's going on. And you're kind of just, it happens a lot in games with like a lot of darkness, where you're kind of just fumbling around in the dark and you don't know where these sounds are coming from. It's like the fear of the dark, where you're not really necessarily scared of the dark itself. You're scared of being you're not scared of being alone in the dark. You're scared of not being alone in the dark, you know. And you hear these sounds, and you're not making them. And that's what is like probably the most worrying thing about hearing shit in these games. And that's one thing that I think is fucking extremely powerful. And continuing along the theme of sounds, you know, you got all the moaning and groaning of zombies and ghosts and ghouls and all those creepy things, and it's pretty standard. You hear like the kind of shit, you know, like the super stereotypical like zombie gurgling and the guttural shit. You hear a lot of like the like stock zombie sounds, and those are kind of cool. I'm not a huge fan. I think they're I think they're super overused, and it's become like a staple, you know. And I've seen a couple videos of people like doing the sounds of zombies, and it's just like, it just looks silly. Like people, like just random, like the voice actors just making guttural screaming sounds. So like, I mean, they're cool, but I like when there's really interesting sounds, like how some of the head crab zombie dudes will like beg you to fucking like kill them or help them, and how they just talk to you. Like when they're talking to you, and they're like begging you to help them. It's fucking sad, you know. It's creepy, but it's also like, fuck, you empathize with it, you know. And I think a talking enemy, like a talking monster, is a lot worse, because it's like, oh great, it's taunting you, it's you know, it can trick you, and you know, that's like one thing with Evil Dead. Hearing the enemies like talking shit, it's kind of funny. But yeah, I grow a little tired of like the stereotypical zombie noises. So whenever I hear something that is unique, that actually stands out, it is very appreciated. But as far as all the sounds go, those are some of the things that I think are super important. You know, you got all the fucking the you know, stereotypical enemy sounds, and some of these games they have enemies that just, you know, will straight up talk. But some of the more interesting ones are really fucking cool and appreciated. And you know, some of the things that I really like a lot in horror is I like a lot of psychological stuff, like the fuck, what was that game called? The Layers of Fear, the psychological, like not psychological, like the like a psychedelic horror experience. It's really weird to describe it as that, but shit like that, like the things that fuck with your head, I can really appreciate. Or even just really cheesy shit, like some Resident Evil 1.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
Like fucking PS1 shit, you know, all like the really cheesy dialogue. I fucking love cheesy dialogue, and that's probably why Resident Evil is like my jam. And yeah, those are just some of the things that I really appreciate in horror, and I am super thankful for the genre in general, because that's where I spend most of my time, is playing these really spooky horror games. And I subject myself to like torture basically just by playing all these things and having my fucking heart rate shoot through the fucking roof. But you know, that's pretty much all I want to fucking ramble about. And you know, that's it. Thanks for watching.